Okay, and welcome to the Freedom Hustles podcast. My name's Andy Lehman. I am the co-owner of freedomskillsacademy.com, and I am with...
Good evening, John Banks, as usual, over at sidingcommand.com.
So, John, how are you doing today?
Very good. Yep. I've had to move chairs because my cat is sat in my normal one. So I'm a bit of a soft touch and I don't kick her out. So I've had to wheel the other chair in from the other office.
That's
the
you
other
and me
desk
both.
indoors. Yeah.
I get grief off my missus for not moving the cat out of chairs. I'll leave her to sleep.
Yep.
But you're enjoying the weather. It's a bit warmer today.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah, we did have a bit of a storm earlier, but no, generally, hopefully we're on the change now for some warmer weather, which is good. So anyway,
it's been a bit late coming, hasn't it?
Oh yeah, May was horrendous, wasn't it? Yeah.
Right. So what? Talking about cats, I can see her now. So what's the agenda for tonight, then, John?
So the topic of this evening for this podcast is quite a common sort of question I get quite a bit. I know you've kind of heard of it before, and it is a thing that sort of stumbles people a lot, and it holds people back. So we're going to talk about why you do not need to be an expert in order to sell stuff online. So products, courses, eBooks. If you want to make a membership site, anything really that involves selling your knowledge, and why you don't need to be the leading expert in your field in order to do it. We're going to be talking a little bit about that. Something I think we can both relate to, definitely. We've both kind of experienced. Everyone's got to start somewhere. So, we're just going to have a little chat about that. Hopefully it'll maybe get some people motivated in order to perhaps do something that they may have been putting off for a while.
I think it's a very, very important topic because there's a couple of reasons why. First of all, there are people who are actually sort of experts or semi-experts in their field, and they get imposter syndrome, which then makes them freeze. So the brain is really, really strange how sometimes it perceives things. But and like you say, there's a lot of people out there who are probably afraid of going out and doing something because they don't think they're an expert. They probably are. They don't believe that they know enough, and so they probably don't bother. But as we all know, when you go to school or when you go to a like business studies, the people who generally teach you the stuff aren't necessarily experts in that field either. They just know more than the person they're teaching.
Yeah.
Which basically puts them in the position of being more of an expert. I mean, I was having this discussion the other day with somebody, and there's if you are a very successful businessman, for example, in a specific area, then it gives you a lot of credit, a lot of kudos. There's a lot of sort of testimony, a lot of strength there, and you can probably charge more. But you don't need to. And someone was saying to me, well, you shouldn't really go to business school and learn business studies through someone who's never been a successful businessman. And I thought, well, that's not necessarily true. I am not an electrician, nor have I been electrocuted, but I'm pretty certain that I'm allowed to tell people not to lick live wires.
Yeah.
I know that if you do, you're going to electric shock. So I do believe I'm in a position I can pass that information down to a child or somebody who doesn't know.
Yeah.
So in their eyes, I probably am a professional and godlike figure, trying to warn them not to do anything stupid. But generally, the way I look at it, I mean, there's two things as well. It's not just a case of necessarily having to be the expert. Yes, if you know more than the average person, which most people forget. But the second thing is sometimes you just have to be a publisher.
Yeah.
And that's a business.
Yeah. I mean, and I think another angle that people kind of often forget about is that it's just something that I definitely I need to work on this part of it. I know that. And that is that people buy people. So,
Yeah.
you know, there could be 100 people in the room presenting exactly the same PowerPoint presentation, right? And they would all do it slightly differently. You know, they would all present it in a different way. They would all stop and ask questions in a different way. They would all, you know, take feedback from the audience in a different way. They would do things differently. And I think that as an individual, people need to realize that people
Mm.
buy into other people. Um, and
Hmm.
again, this goes back to a lot of some of the stuff we've talked about on previous episodes, which is things like the 80-20 rule. You know, I've experienced it before where I've sold stuff to people and then I could release something else maybe 6 months down the line and I'll look at the buyers and quite often it'll be the same buyers that bought the stuff maybe 6 months ago or a year ago. So you end up having this kind of core buyer base
Hmm.
almost no matter what, really. And they obviously take a shine to your products. They take a shine to perhaps the way you deliver stuff, the way you teach it. Everything's available for free. We know this, right? Everything
Yeah.
virtually, everything, almost everything is available for free. You can go and look it up. You can go and find it. You could spend hours and hours trying to find it, but you'll find it through loads of different ways of teaching it. There'll be loads of different tutors that will be teaching it. There'll be loads of different YouTube channels. There'll be loads of different blog posts, and they'll all be doing it in a slightly different way. And it won't be packaged together right. It'll all be here, there, and everywhere. I mean, your job as a creator or as a publisher is to kind of just package it all together and deliver it in a way that suits your audience, that they
Mm.
can relate to you with, you know?
It's like you said about people buying into people. That's absolutely correct. I mean, you've got. I mean, this is more sort of a personality as opposed to just a background publisher. But you've just got to look at musicians and bands, or celebrities. You've
Mm,
got people. They have their loyal followers. They have their fanatics, their fans, their
mm,
tribe, their cult. Anybody can have one of those. Some may have more than others, but on the whole, it's like, how come there's not one person who's got 100% track rate of being liked by everyone?
no,
Because some
just
people,
no.
some people prefer something else. I mean,
Mm,
as you said, you could have about 5 people in the room giving the same presentation, but you might warm to somebody differently because
mm,
they might be in tune with the way that you learn, the probably way
mm,
you're, and someone may come out. You could even have, going back to the idea that you're not a professional, you could have an engineer trying to give a talk, and yet the person who probably wins the crowd over is probably a non-engineer who's
mm.
basically just looked at the slides, read it,
Yeah,
evolved on with stories, and came out with a sort of charisma. Could probably wipe the floor with the actual engineer because he's got different skill set which he's bringing to the table.
yeah, 100%.
You know what I mean? Because I mean, a
Mm.
lot of engineers are
Really
quite
technical stuff. And
serious.
yeah,
Yeah, they're very straight to the point and literal. Whereas someone who's like a storyteller, I mean, I told you the story about the guy who sold loads of secondhand
on
um,
eBay, wasn't it?
cheap
Yeah.
stuff on eBay by creating a story.
Mm,
And so, if you get someone out there who associates a story with a product, it can be people can learn from it better. So you don't necessarily have to be the professional in the field. You can just read that information, and then it's how you relay it to other people.
yeah,
That can be a very important sort of a business step.
yeah. And like going back to what you said at just after the intro is massive, massive aspect, and that is that you only need to know, you only need to be 2 or 3 steps ahead of the audience, don't you? I've heard that saying quite a
Yeah,
few times, and I really like that, and it's true, you know, and you do. You literally only need to know. If you imagine a book on something, you only need to be a few chapters ahead, and you already know more than the people who are behind. So who are the
mm,
people that have perhaps come to that, you know, you know, typed in that search term, or they've come to sign up to your course, or they've bought your book. They've bought it because they want to learn something a little bit extra,
mm,
or they want to know how to do something quicker, or they want to know how to do something that will, perhaps save them time. And if you can solve that problem, it doesn't matter if you're not the absolute expert in that entire field. But if you know how to do that one thing that they've come looking for answers for, then I think you have just as much right as anyone else to try and solve that problem.
Absolutely. I mean, you got to ask the question, first of all, what makes you an expert? What makes you a professional? I know in the old sense, in the academic sense, you'd get a professor was you had to have a doctorate. You could only be, the term profession came from sort of like professor. Yeah, I could, even though I was a skilled certified joiner, I remember having this conversation with someone saying I wasn't a professional in it because I wasn't a professor. I didn't have a doctorate. And it's like, well, I've been to college, I've done the exact same thing. But really, in effect, what makes a person an expert? How do you define an expert? And as you say, it depends if you know more than somebody else.
Yeah,
It's often very
absolutely.
relative, it's subjective. And also, you don't have to basically go to university to learn everything. And yes, things like the pandemic that's happening. We've got people who are into the virus. They've studied at university. They're really clever people. They are professionals in there. But you could also have somebody who basically spends all his time at home reading information on it, and in a pub conversation could probably wipe the floor with lots of
100%.
anti-vaxxers or somebody else. So is he not a professional in what he knows? Is he not an expert in that field? He might not be certified particularly, but
Doesn't matter.
he knows his stuff.
No.
And but that also brings me on to another quick sort of side subject of it, and that is that if you want to create products, you want to create a website, a membership site, and like we said, something's holding you back. You don't know if you know enough information, or if you don't know enough, you don't think you're professional enough. I want to ask the question: what is research? I mean, you go to university, you go to study in your profession, you do the vocation, you do the skills, you do lots of research. What's the difference between doing it from a classroom, from a university point of view, from reading 3 or 4 books at home?
Yeah.
Isn't reading 3 or 4 books technically classed as research?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's the yeah. We're going to get a bit too deep into that, but yeah, it's the whole kind of school system in general, isn't it? I mean, but nowadays, like I say, we're blessed, aren't we? Like we talked about before, we're blessed with the internet. Years ago, for example, to sort of teach anything, you had to have some kind of, formal qualification, like you say. Whereas now, you can create a course, you can stick it on your own website, anyone can buy it. Or you can create a course, you can stick it on one of the numerous third-party websites.
Yep.
What have we talked? Udemy, Skillshare, Learn, LUNRN, sorry, learn.com. There's a whole load of them. OutSchool was another one I was looking at today, actually, which is really good. And that's face to face. So that's where you actually set up live
Okay.
live classes. So like you can enroll,
Yep.
you charge $50 per student, and then maybe you might get 10, and then you cap it, and then that's it, you finish, and then you actually present live to those students. I mean, and you don't need any formal qualification. You don't have to be you don't need a degree in, you don't have had to gone to university or anything to get those teaching qualifications. If you know what you're talking about, and
Yeah.
this is what we talked about before. If you know what you're talking about, and you can present it in such a way that resonates with the audience, it's going to be social proof. So they're going to rate you. They're going to give you a rating. They're going to give you 5 stars. They're going to write a little comment in. And then the next time when you launch a course or launch a product or write a book or anything like that, people are going to see that, and they're going to feed off that feedback, and then they're going to carry on. And they're not going to care what your background is. If you can, solve the problem of how to write essays in under 2 hours or whatever the problem is, then people are going to come and use it. And that's why I don't think people should be worried about this kind of expert title.
Yeah, I mean, it's very. there's certain times where you probably do need to be certified, but there's definitely absolutely no reason why a person who is not certified does not know enough. I mean,
Yeah.
especially when we're not talking about like life saving.
And we're not
I
talking
don't know,
about no
flying
open
an
heart
airplane.
surgery, learning it on
Yeah.
YouTube. No, we're not doing anything like that.
We're not talking about they need really sort of certified and
Of
testing.
course. Mm.
But saying that though, there's absolutely no reason why someone does not know all the same amount of technical knowledge of how a plane works. I mean, I remember a story not so long back, slightly going off at a tangent, but some guy built his own. What's those things that they test in? When they're doing simulators,
Mm.
he built his own because he wanted to be a pilot, and so
Yeah.
he read book after book after book. He had the knowledge in there, but he wasn't particularly certified. He built his own simulator, whatever you call it,
Yeah.
in his house, so he could
Crazy.
practice
Mm.
flying. So there's absolutely no reason why you cannot know the same amount of knowledge as someone else. You might not be a doctor, it might not be a professor, but you don't necessarily need to. And yes, sometimes them titles on books help sell because it gives you a bit of a background. Like if you worked in a hospital for 15 years through diabetes,
Mm.
you're going to know your stuff. But that doesn't mean that you don't actually know enough about the keto
Well,
diet to write a book.
exactly. I mean, I think is if you go back to we go back to passions and what you do,
Mm,
and if people get a bit confused about, I don't know what to write, I don't know what to make a course about, I don't know what to write about, or they get a bit overwhelmed. There's no way I could do that. I bet you there is. Right? If you just take a step back, what do you do, even in your main career, even in your day job, right? Take you for example. You used to be joiner, carpentry, and all that.
yeah.
You know, we've talked about loads of times before. That's a huge niche that people would love to buy. Deck plans or furniture plans or pallet plans or upcycling plans or a YouTube channel or anything like that. There's loads of angles you can do that. Mine, so like web design, I'm not the best web designer in no way am I the best web designer, but have I sold websites before? Yes. Have I sold courses on how to make websites? Yes. Do you know what I mean? It's not, and that's exactly, there's like real examples of how,
Hmm.
you can do it. And I think as long as you're passionate about a subject, if you know enough about it, I always think if you can talk for 30 minutes without doing any, if you could, your subject, if you could just stand up and talk 30 minutes
Mm,
without any planning, if someone literally just put you on the spot, if you could talk for half an hour about it,
yeah.
you're an expert enough to be able to create something about it. And it doesn't have to be a 20 video, massive $1,000 product. It could
Mm,
simply be a 15-page ebook or a 5 video course,
mhm.
and then it starts. Do you know what I mean? And that's when the momentum starts, and you know, you can go from there.
Exactly. I mean, the other thing is that you just said there as well, which you talk about. If you've sold your websites, you've sold courses about websites, you've got experience. So that itself can trump. Going back to the business studies, a school can have someone lecturing business studies could be a professor in business studies, but he's probably not been a successful business person. Whereas someone has probably gone out there, built a successful business, doesn't have the qualifications or any certification, but even then, the experience
Mm.
can amplify their position. But yeah, I mean, there's like you said, if you can talk for something for half an hour and you're passionate about it, then you obviously know a lot more than most people.
Mm.
And that's, I think, one of the biggest problems that we often forget. As I say, there's also the imposter syndrome, but there's also that one where you just sort of, it becomes second nature. It's like driving a car. You
Mm.
wouldn't think to tell somebody who drives a car how to drive a car unless you're a bit of an
Mm.
arrogant. You when it comes to something like
That's having
that,
out.
when it comes to something like that, you kind of just accept that most people know the same as you. And yet, when you know something like you do with your lasers or whatever you do with in your job, your technician, your labs,
Mm.
is that because you do it so often, you probably forget that other people don't know the same amount as you. He's kind
Mm.
of like, oh yeah, well, I just do that every day,
Mm.
and that's something as well. I think most people tend to forget. They don't seem to think that what they can teach people stuff because it's just simple stuff to them. They've got so used to it. There's no there's nothing there to learn. They know it all, but they forget that they know it all compared to other people.
Mm.
Does that make any
Exactly.
sense?
Yeah, exactly
So
right.
you sometimes you have to take a step back from yourself and then look and go, well, actually, I can do this.
Mm.
I do this. And then you got to look at all you sort of your circle, your friends and circle of family, and you think, well, how many people can actually do that? And it's like, well, actually, there's very few. So then amplify that over the population. The chances are you probably know more than like tens of thousands of people.
We've done it before. We've had that conversation before loads of times, haven't we? Where
Yeah.
we've like, I don't know, we've built a opt-in landing page with a little tripwire offer on the back and a little 10-page PDF report, and knocked it up in a weekend. And then we've sort of thought, and that we've sort of gone, oh yeah, this is it's too easy. Everyone's doing it. And then we sort of think, hang on a minute, what we've just done could actually change people's lives in a way. Like, well, that process that we've just done there, not everyone will know how to do that, and that is essentially the foundation blocks of any kind of online business.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah. When
and
I'm
because we've done so many of them, and we've tried loads, and we've done different models, and we've tested this, and we tried different softwares, and we just kind of, it's like with websites now, you just sort of knock them up, and they're just done, aren't they? It's like when you write a copy, if you write copy, you'll just sort of get in the zone and you'll just hammer it out. Whereas I wouldn't know how to do that, but it because you've done it now quite repeatable, and you do it for a company, and it's your living, it just, like you say, it just becomes second nature. And
yeah, in autism, it's kind of known as sort of mind blindness, and because you get so used to doing something that your mind works in that way, because obviously your brain, when you do something on repetition, it becomes you just kind of, like you say with the writing, I kind of think of headlines in a specific way because I've done it so many times, or building websites, and you sort of mind blindness is you sort of put your thoughts into other people's heads, and you forget that they can't read and see what's in your mind. So like, I get support tickets from people who will be asking questions, and I'll be thinking, that's just so simple. How can you not see it? It's like, and then if you forget that they've never done anything like that before, and they're absolutely new to what it is. And we've had like 10 years of dabbling with it since we probably started doing. I mean, I think it was probably 2009 I first started messing around with websites, and my mate used to laugh at me because I used to do things, and he'd laugh at me because I hadn't got a clue what I was doing, but he did.
yeah,
Now I've got to that point where I'm looking at other people as he was looking at me. And then you've got to remember that they're in that position that I was, and I just didn't have a clue. But I've learned it all. I know it all now. I know so much.
you know enough to you know
Um,
enough. Exactly. That's all you need to do, isn't it? Like we said, yeah.
yeah, and when you sometimes you forget that people, they don't see what you see, and they don't know what you know, and what you just do as second nature, or what you know, is just so much more than most people.
I
But,
mean, I think one of the things I remember is my first ever product I made was, I'm just getting it up now. So one of the first products I made was a product about infographics, right? And this is going back years. And I didn't really know enough about, I didn't really know that much about infographics, but they're kind of like graphics, but with it they present data. So it's like data presented in kind of graphical form. So you'd have this quite often, these big long images, and they'd be broken down, and they present almost like present data. But they were quite a neat way of presenting stuff, and they were really big on Pinterest when it first came out. And I started making them around our niche. I mean, I think we were working for a company years. We were doing it was years ago. We were working for a company with some other people, and I was making them around about that time because they were getting quite good traction. I think it was
yeah,
Pinterest and also Google Plus. They were doing quite well on that. So
yeah,
anyway,
yeah, yeah.
so I started making them, and I just stumbled across a little technique almost accidentally making these things. and I was using PowerPoint, and which is not really a graphical tool for making them, right?
It's not an art package, is it
No,
really?
not an art package at all. But I'd sort of carved out a little way of doing it, and I managed to get it down to quite quick. And I called the product, it was called something like 30-minute infographics or something like that.
It rings a bell.
And so the idea being that I could make this infographic with 30 minutes. And so the pain points were people that didn't have expensive software, right?
Hmm.
Speed, i.e., they don't want to spend all day doing this, and a system. And I'd solved all three of them problems with this one product. It
Hmm.
was it was in PowerPoint, which most people had Microsoft Office.
Yeah.
You could do them in 30 minutes, and there was a load of templates, so it was all easy to follow, and it was kind of an over the shoulder thing. Now I had no right, really. I wasn't an expert I definitely didn't have any clue about stuff like Photoshop or anything real expensive graphic software packages, nothing like that. And so I just dumbled all this together. I think I sold it on, it was either Warrior Forum or JVZoo, anyway, one of them. But it sold like a couple of 100 copies. And I remember having some quite nice paydays out of that. And I thought, Jesus, that was amazing. And I
Hmm.
reckon that was probably 4 videos of me over the shoulder. So it wasn't me on camera, didn't have to do anything like that. It was just over the shoulder, showing how to do it. And yeah, and I think it sold like a couple of 100 copies.
I
That was
remember selling a
you,
few for you.
yeah, you sold a load. Yeah. And I remember
Yeah.
thinking, and that was a classic example of, solve a problem. You don't have to be the absolute best at it. As long as it
Mm.
works, and it's fine.
Can I point out as well? There's probably a fourth benefit there, pain point that you helped alleviate, is that at that time, infographics were doing great, as you say, on Pinterest. They were delivering a lot of traffic,
Mm.
and so you gave everyone a free way or a quick way of
Yeah.
creating traffic generating um,
Images. Yeah.
products, infographics. So there was pulling traffic back to their website. But the other thing as well is that you just reminded me is that, like you said, you're not a graphic designer, as in that respect, you're not like a time served qualified 15 years at university sort of graphic designer,
Right.
10 years designing books for whatever. But you didn't pretend to be either. Now that's the other thing. We've talked about the difference between sort of professional doctors or this idea.
Mm.
As long as you're not claiming to be something, then there's absolutely no reason why you can't,
Yeah. Mm.
create a successful business. You're not going to go out there and start talking about diabetes and the keto diet and fasting like
Mm.
I do
No.
by saying I'm not going to call myself Dr. Lehman because I'm not. But
No.
I've read a lot, I've done a lot, and as you know, I fast. I don't eat. I generally eat once a day because I've been looking into it, and I can tell other people about certain benefits for fasting.
Mm.
But I don't claim to be a doctor, and I never will do.
No.
And with you doing that infographic thing, like you say, you weren't a professional designer. You didn't pass yourself off as a professional designer. But what you did do is that you niched down and you offered, like you said, you focus on these three sort of four pain points, and you developed a product that was infographics. It wasn't necessarily design. It wasn't anything to do with that. It was just infographics, and that's what you niched down on, and that's
Mm.
what you specialized in, and that's probably what some professional designer, graphics designer, probably even never done an infographic, probably won't even know where to start.
Mm.
But you knew far more than most people, and you
Yeah.
delivered that in a product.
And that was something that I'd probably learned a month prior to that. And that goes to show, that just shows sort of what we were talking about. You only need to be a few steps ahead in order to be able to pass that knowledge on. And I think don't be afraid to charge for it either. Why shouldn't you? I mean, that's another thing that really, really annoys me, and that is that people sort of think you have to give everything away for free all the time. But I'm a great believer in over delivering and giving away free content. I'm not saying don't do that, but there comes a point when we're all we're all the same. We've all got bills to pay and families to support, and
Yeah.
don't believe all the hype that you see on in your Facebook feeds about not everyone's millionaires that's working online and
No.
hustling out a living on the internet. They still live normal lives, and there's no reason why you shouldn't charge for your knowledge.
No, I mean, this should be a podcast for another day, but there's definitely a
Yeah,
mindset in there where people seem to think that, especially today now, things are more digital, that you create the work once, you do a PDF or you do a course and you put it online, a YouTube video or something like that, that once it's done now, that technically you can give it away for free. But you say to them, I'll tell you what, why don't you come and spend 8 hours fitting some doors at my house and do that for free? But, oh, no, I need to do that. It's like, well, why do you expect me to give stuff away free? Oh, well, you've already done it now. It's there, isn't it? Well, no, it's not. It's
exactly.
work. It's
It's work.
you don't go to WH Smith's and take a paper for free because it's already been printed and it's on the shelf. There's costs involved.
There's a lot of research that goes into stuff, and
yeah. So, like you say, you should not necessarily feel compelled, or people expecting you to give away things for free. You should be able to charge, definitely, because you are providing a service. You're providing education. We here in England, I don't know if anybody's listening to us around the world, but here in the UK, we have, I won't even say it's a free education system because it's paid through our taxes, but people see it as being free because they don't actually pay. You don't pay a daily rate or a weekly rate to go to send your children to school, but it's paid through our taxes. It is paid. And I don't know anything really which is particularly free.
No.
You can do something to give it away, but you have a right to earn from it, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. And like you say, if you're starting out small, so if you're going back to the beginning, if you've never listed anything, if you've never launched anything, if you've never sold anything, and you don't know what to do, then just go sort of low entry. Just start offering out something. Build something up together. If you've got a little bit of a following, then there's no reason why you can't charge. Even if you just charge $5 or $10 or £10, or you are allowed to. Don't worry, it's perfectly fine. You can make if you've got a PayPal account, you can get yourself a PayPal button. You can set that up, and you are perfectly allowed to do that.
If it helps, if anybody, like you say, wants to get involved, but they do feel that they don't have the expertise, they're not a professional, they ain't got this on the other. If it helps, see yourself as the publisher. I mean, the guy who is behind the famous books, the For Dummies books, I can't think of his name, Vanderkamp or something like that. I can't think of his name, but he is the guy who publishes the books. But I can tell you now, he doesn't know anything about all the other
He's not going
subjects.
to know every single topic of.
No. I mean, I know they do try and bring in experts on some, but I mean, again, going back to the experts, you hire a ghostwriter at Upwork and say, I want an ebook writing, I want 40 odd pages on this subject. You give them research material and tell them to go, they'll do the research and write your book.
Yeah.
They've just basically done the research, and that's something that you can do. Once you know more than the average person, you can create a product as simple as that, like you say. Start off small. If it's a 15, 24 page PDF or something on something that you're going to sell for like $4.99, get started. It's build your confidence if you need to, but yeah, you most definitely do not need to be a expert or professional.
And that's exactly it, isn't it? And I think that's I don't think people. I think sometimes you can overthink stuff, and you don't need to
Definitely,
fill stuff out. I mean, my latest product, I'm not going to reveal what it is because it's still kind of in pre-launch. But my latest product, well, you know about it. It's about I think it's a 20-page PDF, and that's it.
Yeah.
And that's already selling now, and it could do more. We're sort of in talks, but you don't need to overthink. I think once you've delivered what needs to be delivered, if you can solve that problem, if you know enough about something to be able to solve that problem, just do that. Just focus on that. A lot of products I get sent to or read or even buy myself, sometimes there's a lot of padding, a lot of filler.
Yeah.
which doesn't really need to be there.
Which is a lot, just to try and make it look more valuable than what
Yeah.
it's worth.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't know. I think we've sort of covered enough really tonight. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, not really. It's just, I mean, if the other thing that's stopping you back is perfectionism, again, I would question that, because a lot of perfectionism is basically personal and ego. Because there's lots of musicians and authors who probably won't publish certain things because, oh, I'm not happy with that, but their fans would probably adore it. That's. I used to work for a guy who used to spend hours trying to make sure the picture was this way or that way. It probably never even altered the sales. But if perfectionism is stopping you, then you need to know, you need to deliver a good product. You need to make sure that you deliver the best, but you got to know when the best is the best, and then have a cut-off point. Don't keep trying to, oh, I'm not going to release it just yet, I don't think it's right. Well, no, you're missing out on money. You're missing out on changing your life or something like that. Perfectionism is not what other people see, it's what you think, and it's not necessarily correct.
That's a good point, actually. Just before we go, I just want to tap on this. You've sold stuff before where you haven't even made the product yet. Is that right?
Yes.
So you just written a sales page, and then you've literally just written a sales page, sent that out, seen what the uptake is. If people buy it, then you go, okay, right, let's get to work then.
It's basically working on like what you said earlier about you have a fan base, people, there's an email list, they like the things that you do, they're kind of used to what you do and stuff like. You have an idea, so you write the sales letter, send out an email to the email list, and then you see if there's any takers, and then you create the product afterwards. As long as it's not a ridiculously big product, we're not. But if you can knock it up there and then that day or the next couple of days, not leave people waiting too long, then yeah, it is a well-known thing in the direct response, or especially the email marketing business, is you can build a product around the actual people. You test them, you try it out. So, but yeah.
All right. Well, excellent. Okay, well, we'll leave it at that, I think. Thanks very much.
Good talk.
Yeah, that was episode 36. I think there was enough in there. I think we may be on to something for the next episode, actually, what we just talked about at the end. But anyway, all right, well, thanks very much. I've been John Banks. You can find me over at sideincommand.com.
Okay, I'm Andy Lehman, and you'll find me over at freedomskillsacademy.com. And I just want to say thank you very much for listening to episode 36 of the Freedom Hustles podcast. And I do believe that the pair of us are becoming experts and professionals in waffling. So there we go.
Yeah, course coming soon.
Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks.